New year, new list, same old Maverick. With a brand new intro. Welcome to 2016, ladies and gentlemen. While last year had its bumps, for the most part, I had a great 2015, both when it came to gaming and just life in general. But instead of looking back at the games that entered my library last year, I've decided to do something a little bit different, and look forward to the ones that'll probably enter my library this year. There's a lot of great games that are set for release in 2016, and today, I'm here to count down which ones I'm excited for. Now, aside from the obvious one per franchise rule, I also won't be including any games that came out in January. Granted, there's a chance that some of the games on this list may be out by the time this video comes out, but whatever. Now we've finished establishing everything, let us commence! Fire Emblem Awakening may not be anywhere near my favorite game anymore, but there's a lot I still love about it. And above all else, I appreciate it for breathing new life into the Fire Emblem series and helping make it a staple franchise in Nintendo's lineup. Considering that Fire Emblem was on the verge of coming to an end, it's great to see Awakening help save it from their fate. And it seems that Nintendo's taking full advantage of Awakening's success, as you can tell by the release of Fire Emblem Fates this month. This is one of those games I was referring to when I said that some games on this list may be out by now, but I still felt like including this on the list. There's certainly a lot I'm looking forward to when it comes to this game, aside from the obvious fact of me liking Awakening. The gameplay is looking just as good as before, while also fixing some of the issues present in Awakening, like making pair-up less broken, and the story's definitely looking to be far better than Awakening's story, which was by far one of the weaker parts of it. I also like the idea of giving you the choice of being able to choose which army you end up fighting for, though I initially imagined it would have been a decision you can make in-game and not in-store. Still not sure if I'll be getting Birthright or Conquest, but knowing my luck, I probably won't have the money for this game until a possible bundle that includes both games plus the DLC third route, so I might wait for a bit. Also, I'm about 99% sure that I'm not the only one who thinks this, but am I the only one who doesn't really care that the North American version of the game doesn't include the Fire Emblem equivalent to Pokemon and Me? Awakening was Waifu Simulator-esque enough already. We don't really need the creepy face-petting minigame to multiply that. If you told me a little while back that sometime in the future there would be a Pokemon fighting game made by the same team behind the Tekken series, I would probably try to imagine what it would be like, but then I would tell you that there was pretty much no chance of that ever happening. Well, sure enough, we're getting exactly that soon in the form of Pokken Tournament, though I'm not sure if I would really refer to this as a Tekken game. If anything, it looks like it plays more like the Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm games. Sadly, the game hasn't proven to be a hit in Japanese arcades, but that was mostly because of the severe lack of characters or overall content in the arcade version, which may not be the case for the console version, considering the additional characters that are being added in it. Speaking of which, I'll fully admit that the lineup of playable characters for this game is not exactly what I was expecting. I mean, Pokemon like Lucario, Machamp, Blaziken, Weavile, I'm not surprised by their inclusion. I'm more referring to Pokemon like Suicune, Chandelure, and Pikachu Libre. So on the subject of Pikachu Libre, does her inclusion mean that we won't be getting Hawlucha in this game? If so, that would be a bit disappointing, but I'll get over it. I'm not sure how well Pokémon's going to do on a competitive fighting game standpoint, but at the very least, this should be a fun fighting game to play with friends. So I doubt many of you know this, but in early January, I went ahead and bought myself a PlayStation 4. Really great system, by the way. And with my PS4 came a little collection of games known by the name of Uncharted. While I haven't played a lot of the Nathan Drake collection, I can definitely see why these games are so critically acclaimed. And how fortunate that I decided to get into the series now, considering that the supposed final installment of the series, A Thief's End, is set for release in a few months. Now, we don't know too much about Uncharted 4 as of now, aside from the basic synopsis of Nathan Drake returning to treasure hunting after discovering that his brother Sam Drake, played by the great Troy Baker, is actually alive and in search of information on a conspiracy about a long-lost pirate colony. But judging the fact that Naughty Dog's been saying that this is going to be the last Uncharted game made by them is making me think that something's going to go down. Probably a character death. It better not be Sully, Naughty Dog. Well, on a gameplay standpoint, Uncharted 4 seems to be less linear than the previous Uncharted games, as shown by the gameplay trailer we saw at E3 last year. And while I didn't mind the linear feel of the previous titles, making it more open would definitely work for a game like this. I'm fairly confident that Naughty Dog will be able to pull off a strong finale for the Uncharted franchise, but we'll just have to wait and see once April rolls around. Unless they decide to delay it again. Back on the topic of next-gen consoles, the reason I ended up getting a PS4 as opposed to an Xbox One is mostly due to the fact that the PS4 had more games I wanted to get. Really, the only Xbox One exclusive I have any interest in is the recent revival of Killer Instinct. And while I've really been wanting to give this game a try, it was enough to warrant the purchase of an Xbox One for me. Well, fortunately enough, it's got its third season launching shortly, which includes a port of the game on PC. Huzzah! So yeah, with this in mind, I've had my eyes on Killer Instinct even more so than before. And believe me, my interest in this game was already pretty strong. While we've only gotten a bit of information on what Season 3 is going to be providing, we do have a small handful of characters confirmed. For starters, remaining Killer Instinct 2 characters Kim Woo and Tusk have already been confirmed to be returning, although we've only seen Kim Woo in action. And hey, she looks pretty cool. But alongside that, we've got 2 Microsoft guest characters confirmed to be joining the roster this time around. The first being Rash from Rare's infamous Battletoads series, and the second being the freaking Arbiter from the Halo series. But besides that, so far, it's proving to be just as amazing as the previous seasons of Killer Instinct. And the fact that I'll be able to partake in it this time around just makes things even better. Granted, I'll have to upgrade to Windows 10 first, but it should be worth it. Maybe. So as many of you probably remember, I don't really like Shadow of the Colossus. But even with that in mind, there's still a lot I can appreciate about the game, such as the visuals, the music, and the general idea of the game. I mean, I personally don't like how it was done, but I can at least praise the concept behind it. And even despite my dislike for the game, I've been finding myself pretty interested in how their new game is turning out, that being The Last Guardian. Yep, that game that used to be the butt monkey of several jokes about games that would never come out, but after 6 years of pretty much no information from the developers, it finally made a return at last year's E3, looking better than ever. Although we haven't seen much of the game, we've seen enough to get the basic gist of what the game will be like. Essentially, you play as this boy, whose job is to survive with the assistance of his giant beast companion. The beast acts very much like an actual wild animal, meaning you have to teach it and tame it, while also using its natural instincts to your advantage. Yep, implementing realism into the companion character yet again! However, very much unlike Shadow of the Colossus, I do think how it's being implemented here is going to work to its advantage, especially since this animal is going to be more of a focus in regards to the gameplay than Aggro was. And that's pretty much all I have to say on the matter. Again, we don't really know much else, not even what quarter of the year we're going to get it, so we'll just have to wait and see how this turns out. Speaking of games we don't know much about, let's talk about the new Legend of Zelda game, or as I like to call it, The Zelda Scrolls Trireme, or The Zelda Scrolls Skyloft, or insert other Zelda and Elder Scrolls joke here. This game got announced back in E3 2014, showing off a beautiful cel-shaded art style, a few new mechanics like the Matrix-style slow motion during mid-air arrow firing, and the fact that the game would be open world, hence the Elder Scrolls jokes I made earlier. However, cut to 2016, and that's still all we know about the game. Despite this, I think that's enough to be able to get people hyped. I mean, with a series like Legend of Zelda, it's really easy to get people excited. Heck, I wouldn't even call myself that big of a Zelda fan, and even I'm excited with this little information. I think it would be smart if Nintendo gives us at least a bit more information about the game either before or at E3 this year. Like a title. But even if they didn't, I think it's safe to say they've confirmed several purchases for this game already. That's to be expected nowadays with main series Zelda games. So back in 2012, Square Enix graced the world with a new IP of theirs entitled Bravely Default, a turn-based 3DS RPG that played similarly to the old-school Final Fantasy games, most notably Final Fantasy V. Granted, it took until 2014 for the rest of the world to get it, but regardless, it was received with worldwide praise. So naturally, it would make sense for Square Enix to continue working with this new franchise, and sure enough, shortly after its launch in Japan, word went out that Square Enix was already planning a sequel for the game, and by the end of 2013, a title was announced. Bravely Second End Lair. Now Japan already got this game last year, but the rest of the world's going to be getting it within the next few months. And as someone who loved Bravely Default, you can bet I'm excited for this new installment. Gameplay wise, Bravely Second is pretty much exactly the same as Bravely Default, putting more of a focus on ironing out some of Bravely Default's mechanics, but the real difference with the game comes from the story. The game is set to take place 2.5 years after the events of the first game. And while we do have some new characters in the spotlight, there will be some old faces amongst the cast, most notably Edea and Tiz, the latter of which has definitely changed since the events of the last game. However, in regards to story, I've been purposely avoiding spoilers, so I know little to nothing about it aside from the plot being fueled by the kidnapping of Agnes, one of the party members from the first game. Sadly, Sound Horizon won't be returning as the composers this time around, but instead, we're getting the equally talented Supercell. And from what I've heard of Bravely Second's soundtrack thus far, they're doing a fantastic job. There's not much else to say on the matter. One of the best RPGs of this generation is getting the sequel it deserves, and that's absolutely fine by me. Yet another game that may be out by the time of this video's release. Here we have the next installment in Capcom's iconic fighting game franchise, Street Fighter V. Now this game's announcement couldn't have been timed more perfectly. I had just been getting into the Street Fighter series in the second half of 2014, And what better way to get me into a franchise than to announce a new title? So to put it simply, I've been excited for this game pretty much since the very beginning, and as time has gone on, my excitement levels have only been going up. Instead of basing itself off of the previous game of the franchise, Street Fighter V takes bits and pieces from several Street Fighter games, while also incorporating new mechanics like the V-Gauge, which allows you to pull off numerous techniques such as a temporary character buff or a character-specific ability like reflecting or parrying. Another thing of note with this game is the roster. At launch, the game is set to have 16 characters, bringing back 8 characters from Ultra Street Fighter 4, those being Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Cammy, Dhalsim, Zangief, Vega, and M. Bison, while also revitalizing 4 characters that we haven't seen since Alpha 3, those being the now obese Birdie, the now older Karen, the now exactly the same as before Armika, and the now back from the dead Charlie Nash, and of course, 4 brand new characters, those being the raging beast Necalli, the friendly Middle Eastern fighter Rashid, the electric-powered Brazilian fighter Laura, and whatever Fang is supposed to be. The one thing I really like about this game already is how Capcom intends on handling DLC. Essentially, they're going to do it in the style similar to MOBAs. In other words, when a DLC character is released, they're passed into the game and can be bought with either real money or with in-game money. So you can actually get all the DLC in the game without having to pay a cent. Capcom's definitely learned when it comes to DLC, that's for sure. Speaking of other things being done differently with the game, Street Fighter V is going to be getting a cinematic story mode similar to that of the recent Mortal Kombat games later on down the line, which is definitely a first for the franchise, and I'm pretty excited to see how they handle that. Overall, there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to this game, and who knows, by the time this list comes around, I may have it already. It's unbelievable how ambitious indie games have been getting in the last few years. What started as, you can make flash games for Newgrounds and addicting games, has now become, you can make games on the scale of AAA titles and even surpass them. And while I've seen a lot of grand indie games, no other indie game has defined ambition more so in my eyes than the upcoming space adventure game No Man's Sky. This first-person adventure survival game puts you in a completely unrecognizable galaxy, and has you fighting to survive while also exploring the many planets that this galaxy has. And while this seems pretty standard, what No Man's Sky has going for it is the scale of it all. The game's development team, Hello Games, have already confirmed that the game's going to have a total of over 18 quintillion planets, with supposedly no 2 planets being exactly alike. Yeah, when I said ambition, I was not exaggerating. Not only that, but everything you discover you're able to put onto a database that all other players can access. So you're essentially working alongside every other player at playing the game to discover everything this galaxy has to offer. Which is a really good system to have, considering that's been reported that it would have to take a total of 5 billion years to explore every single planet in the game by yourself. Another thing I find fascinating about this game is the art style. It has a bizarre collection of colors, some you wouldn't see together in a game with the genre usually, and kinda reminds me of the covers you'd see on old school sci-fi novels. That actually makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. Bottom line, No Man's Sky definitely has a lot going for it as an indie game, and while it definitely has the chance to be a massive disappointment, it also has the chance to become one of the greatest games of all time. Let's hope it's the latter. While the series hasn't been in its best state of quality in the last little while, I can honestly say that the next few years are making me happy that I'm a Final Fantasy fan. Considering that my favorite main series game is finally getting the long-awaited remake everyone's been wanting, and my dream for a third Dissidia has become a reality, it was pretty safe to say that a Final Fantasy title would be topping this list for me. However, both the new Dissidia game and the FF7 remake don't have confirmed release dates yet, and judging the sounds of it, we're probably not going to get either game till 2017. Fortunately, there is a Final Fantasy game set for release this year, and about freaking time, too! Probably even more infamous than The Last Guardian for its state of development hell, we have the game that was once a spin-off to one of the weakest main series titles in the series, but became a main series title of its own, Final Fantasy XV. A game that began development for the PlayStation 3 back in 2006, it's finally reaching the end of its 10-year development period, as it's set for release on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One later this year. And my goodness, a lot has changed about this game since its announcement way back when. Story-wise, we've heard very little so far. All we really know is that our main protagonist, Noctis, is a prince whose homeland is invaded by an enemy kingdom that had ironically just signed a peace treaty, and now it's up to Noctis and his friends to journey to this enemy kingdom and take back the crystal they stole from Noctis' father, which just so happens to be the last crystal in the world. But what Square Enix has been highlighting since its return to the spotlight at E3 2013 is the gameplay. The game is going to be an action RPG, with hack-and-slash-like combat somewhat similar to that of Kingdom Hearts. But besides that, this game is implementing a lot of interesting stuff. like a huge open world to explore, as well as other activities like camping, fishing, chocobo riding, and even road trips. Speaking of open world, the scale of this game is huge. The worlds are vast and gigantic, as are the enemies and summons. Seriously, have you seen that Rama cinematic? Honestly, judging what Square Enix has shown us of the game thus far, I feel like they'll have to try more to make this game bad than they will to have to make it good. Or at least, when it comes to the gameplay. For all we know, the story's garbage, but we'll have to wait and see. Point is, we've been waiting an exceedingly long time for Final Fantasy 15, but from the looks of it, it'll be worth the wait. I'm the One-Winged Angel, and I think it's safe to say that 2016 is going to be a really strong year when it comes to video games. Now I just need the money to be able to buy these games.